Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and you might be looking at the title of this video and thinking to yourself, hey, didn't she upload this video a few weeks ago? And yeah, I did. I uploaded my review of the Rook and Rose series, which you can see here behind me, a few weeks ago. At least I thought I did. I had a full-on 40-minute video in which I was just gushing about how much I love the series. A few days after I uploaded that video, I got a comment that was like, hey, this video cuts up at about 12 minutes. Was that intentional? And I was like, no, that wasn't intentional. So it seems something went wrong with the upload or with the rendering of the video or whatever. I had at that point already deleted my previous video because the storage on my computer was chock full and I wasn't able to render another video that I needed to have rendered. So yeah, we're back here again talking about this series again. I'm not gonna start from the beginning. I'm just leaving the other video up and I'm gonna try and continue on from where I stopped there and hit the same points as I did in all the parts of that previous video that I, well, lost, basically. So yeah, obviously those things happen with those videos where you really don't want it to happen, because to be honest, if it was any other series, I would have just said, you know what, fuck it, I just don't have a review of that series up on my channel. But yeah, has to happen to my favorite series, obviously. Anyway, I was still talking about the plot when the other video cut off. I had talked kind of about the plot of the first book, why I enjoyed the way that was set up. So now the only thing that I have left to talk about in terms of plot is the third book, which with the third book, honestly, I went into it with a bit of hesitation, because at the beginning of the third book, there's at least 3 major plot threads that still have to be summed up. Also, there's a bunch of smaller plot threads that maybe don't seem as important that also need to be summed up. And I was like, I don't know if that book is going to mention it. I mean, it's a chunky book. That's the nice thing. I do have my copy of Labyrinth out by now. It's a chunky book that I've started rereading, by the way. It's over 600 pages. It's about like 640 pages. Yeah. Including the glossary, it's 640 pages, so a chunky boy. However, there was so much left to do and left to wrap up, so I was like, how are Emma Carrick gonna do that without either ignoring some plot threads, leaving them completely open, or rushing things? However, they managed to not do that. The way the plot threads are woven into each other within this last book is so beautifully done, because you do every now and again get some plots that maybe, seem like they're forgotten or they've been forgotten for a little bit. However, the reason why that is because the main characters just don't have the space right now to deal with those things. Those things just happen to not be at the forefront of their mind for certain chapters. But when those plot threads come back in, it's made so clear that stuff did happen. It wasn't just that this plot just sat there and nothing happened while everything else was going on. No, stuff happened. We just didn't see it happen because, the people that did something weren't necessarily POV characters, but when it comes back in, it makes sense and it's there again. And with the smaller plot threads, that just means that there's the ability to wrap them up quite quickly, and with the larger plot threads, it gives us the ability to have some twists and turns and surprises and so on. And so I just absolutely love that, really appreciated it. Like, the most negative thing that I can say about this last book is that maybe some things are wrapped up almost a little bit too neatly and sometimes maybe a little bit quote-unquote unrealistic. But then again, this is fantasy. When, if not in fantasy, should we talk about things, or should we wrap things up maybe a bit too neatly, maybe a bit too unrealistic, because it's a story. And so the most important thing isn't necessarily realism, but that it's a satisfying story. A lot of times those two come hand in hand, but sometimes they can also just split apart, and that was for me the case with some of the plot threads. or with some of the character arcs also in this series. And I just really appreciated it, and I really enjoyed it. And so yeah, for me it really worked. Then next, let's talk about characters. The characters in the series mean so incredibly much to me. The way they are written is just beautiful, and they are so lovable, they are so engaging, they are just so enjoyable to read from, and they are such a good vehicle within the series for the world building. Like, I love the characters, I love the relationships of the characters, I love how they move towards each other and away from each other, and how it's really almost a dance over the course of the series, especially in the first 2 books. The characters still move in places, and some get closer, some get farther away, etc. This still also happens in the first half of the 3rd book. Like, you can still see the characters moving, but then when it comes to the end of the book, all the characters have been now set in place in certain relationships to each other, which then enables the plot to come to fruition by the end. And so the relationships in the series, absolutely one of my favorite things about the characters. But something else that I really appreciate about these characters, which I think I started saying but then I forgot because I was sidetracked once again. I'm terrible in talking about this series because, you know, I don't know, I for some reason lose the ability to coherently talk about things the more I love them. So there's that. Anyway, so the thing that I love about the characters is that they're really a vehicle for the world building as well, where a lot of the world building, especially when it comes to culture, because you have this city with very different groups within it. So you have the nobles, the Leganti, you have the Varsenians, who are the colonized people, you have the Nadezrans, the people of mixed heritage where they can't tell anymore, are they more Varsenian, are they more Leganti? Does it really matter? No, because they're Nadezran. You have different factions within the nobles, you have different factions within the Varsenians, and you have different traditions and different ways of looking at the world depending on which culture or which group the characters come from. And that really enables us to really use the characters to make this world come alive, to make the world building come alive. Because you have, for example, our main character Ren, who has a Varsenian mother who has been pushed out of her family, and so Ren just has hardly any connection to her culture or to what she feels is her culture, and it's very much a sore spot for her. And through her we get to know still Varsenian culture, we get to know a lot of importance there. Then when it comes, for example, to the magic system, or to the 2 different magic systems, which I'll get to the magic systems later on, you have these 2 magic systems, Pattern and Numenatria, and the 2 magic systems are very rooted within the cultures that they come from. But the way we get to know that, and the way that we are shown that, and the way that we are told that, is through the discussions between Ren, who is a patterner and who very much works with pattern, as well as another character, Tanakis, who is an inscriptor and who does Numenatria. And so when the 2 of them discuss, we get to see those 2 magic systems. I'm not gonna say in action, because obviously when they do the things that you get to see them in action, but you get to learn about the importance of those systems. Then another character who does so much for world building things in terms of culture, in terms of relationships, etc., is Donaya, who is the head of the noble house that Ren is trying to con her way into. And Donaya is a very interesting character because she is, for a Leganti, she is more sympathetic towards the Varsenians, who are the oppressed people, than other nobles. However, when she talks to Varsenians, or when she talks to characters that we know with Varsenian heritage, a lot of times she says things that she doesn't even notice that she's saying, that are points of friction with other characters. And so it's just the way the characters are implemented for world building, which then helps again with the thing that I said in my other video, where the exposition is just really well done within the series. It's amazing. it's almost impossible, and that's, by the way, that's the way it should be, I think, for a lot of series. It's almost impossible to talk about characters, world building, writing, plot separately, because all of those things are so completely intertwined. Another thing, for example, where characters and world building cross over is language. Depending on which heritage a character has, they might talk slightly different. And it's not like you have phonetic transcription of certain accents or something. No, the sentence structures are different depending on which culture a character comes from. And for characters moving between different cultures, it's then very easy for the reader to recognize which part of their heritage or which part of themselves they are, you know, showing to the outside right now. If you have a character, you, for example, have, I mean, you have it mainly with Ren, who has a lot of different alter egos that she shows to the outside, but who also, again, it's very much Nadesian in that she has this Visenian heritage, but that a lot of times she doesn't feel connected to that heritage, and it's something that hurts her. But the character that I want to talk about that with right now is Grey Serrato, who is the captain of the Vigil, which is like the city watch, the city guard. And so, especially in the first book, when you see him a lot from outside, you get to see him talk as the Liganti do. You get to see him talk in this assumed very proper way. And then in the second book, you get to see him a lot more in his Visenian family and with Visenians, and he talks differently. And it just adds another layer to the world building and to just feeling immersed in the story that I adore and love so much. Then world building, continuing on. I mean, aside from the fact that I just love the layers within the world building with colonialism, with the oppression and so on. I mean, there are a lot of nuances. There's a lot more nuances in this series than with a lot of other series that I've read that have... I won't say that deal with colonialism, because fantasy series that deal with colonialism on purpose do so a lot more consciously, but you know, you often have oppressive systems within fantasy series. However, a lot of times those oppressive systems lack a lot of nuance, and I need to change my battery, so let me quickly do that. Okay, so I'm back. Anyway, you know, having a colonial setting and having a setting where you have so many different cultures that stand in different relations to each other, often oppressive relations, can be very hard to properly, you know, to properly write about in your stories and to properly show how nuanced situations can be without then completely losing track of the story and where the story is supposed to go. And within this series, the thing that I just really enjoyed, where I loved the nuance, is that you kind of get the different levels, because you get the levels of structural issues where, you know, structurally things are shit for Visenians, just flat out. But then you also get the character levels, and obviously at the character level things are a lot more complicated, because humans rarely are just good or just bad. You get those kinds of people, but for other people it is complicated. For Ren it is complicated because first and foremost she feels like an Adesran, but she also feels a connection to the Visenians, and then she gets to know some nobles and starts caring about some noble families. Not necessarily the nobles as an institution, but, you know, personally caring for some nobles. And it makes things hard for her. It makes things hard when it comes to making decisions and when it comes to, you know, feeling like she has to decide what is right and which side she's going to take. Again, I love it when stories are nuanced and don't just go in a straightforward way, and when stories manage to acknowledge the structural problems while not forgetting the interpersonal issues, and to keeping those things kind of separate, kind of together, because you can't really separate those things properly, obviously, but also yeah, it's not like you can discuss both things on one level. And also then not falling into the temptation of being like, okay, here's one group of people and that group of people is all bad. Here's another group of people, that group of people is all good. But then showing the nuances and also the conflicts within those specific groups of people. For example, with the Vrasenians, you have the Vrasenians that are living in Nadezhda. They belong to the city. And then you have the Vrasenians living in the country or the region surrounding the city. And within the story, it's very much so that the Vrasenians not living in the city are the ones who have the authority when it comes to them as a group of people as a whole. And yeah, so that's just really interesting, because then obviously you get Vrasenians who kind of feel just left out of decision making and are like, hey, why do you get to make decisions for us? You are not the ones who have to live in the city, who have to live with the nobles, and yet you don't ask us what we want. And so yeah, there's just so many elements that I absolutely loved within the cultural world building. There's so many nuances, elements, just everything there that is amazing and is gorgeous. And to be honest, if you want to know more about it, I had the absolute pleasure, as of the filming of this video yesterday, I think I'm going to try and upload this video first, I'm not quite sure yet, but I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing Alice Helms and Marie Brennan, and to talk to them and to talk to them about world building, to talk to them about their thoughts. And so that interview will be up probably a couple of days from when I upload this video. If I have already uploaded the interview but not yet this video, it kind of depends on how I have time to edit things, then I will of course leave the video down below, which I highly recommend, to be honest. And it's spoiler free, so yeah. Another aspect of world building is just gender and queerness, and this series has become my gold standard when it comes to queer normative world building, because there's just so much there. There's things thought of that a lot of even other queer authors don't think of, which I understand, because a lot of queer authors consciously, and it's the right to do so, and it's important that those books exist, because even though I say this is my gold standard, like my personal gold standard for what I enjoy in queer normative world building, obviously when it comes to queerness, it's important that we have a whole lot of different ways of doing things and showing things, because queerness is not a monolith. And I think that's really why this series is such a gold standard for me, because first of all, it does things that some other queer authors don't think of, like for example when it comes to succession and heritage, it very consciously is made queer normative, but then also the different cultures have different concepts of queerness. So it's not just you have this fantasy world and there's one concept of queerness. No, you have the different cultures and they have different concepts. For example, the Liganti have very much a modern, or what we now understand genderqueerness to be, or transness to be, which is very personal feeling connected. So I am trans because I feel trans, which by the way is what it is, obviously. Like there's nothing else there. I get that the phrasing right now is a bit can sound a bit rough, because obviously a lot of times we are told that just because we feel something doesn't make something real. When it comes to gender, it absolutely is. So a trans woman is a woman. It doesn't matter what else there is. I just wanted to have that said. But yeah, it's this very modern concept that is very much connected to the identity of who am I as a person. And then the Vrasenians have another concept of queerness that very much is connected to social roles and to social structures, because they have specific roles that can only be held by women or by men. However, just because those roles can only be held by men or only be held by women doesn't mean that you have to be born as a woman or born as a man. However, you do have to transition socially. Some people make that transition out of a desire to hold that role. Others make that decision out of a desire to, you know, be someone else as what they were born as. Or physically born as, I should say. And it's just, again, so many nuances, so many different aspects that gender just plays into the cultures and into society, which, to be honest, we don't always get in fantasy, even if every single character in a fantasy series is queer. And as an anthropologist, personally, like, it sounds horrible to say, but for me the most interesting thing and the thing that gets me most excited about queer fantasy is the way queerness works in the world building and in the societies, rather than seeing the queer characters themselves. It sounds horrible to say, okay, but I'm an anthropologist, so I'm gonna use that as an excuse. So yeah, there's just so much there with queerness, and then again, heritage and succession, things that get overlooked quite a lot when I often get excited hearing authors say, yeah, we build a queer normative world, but then heritage and succession is very much handled along heteronormative, you know, logics. That's not the case in this world building at all, and I love the characters. I love the characters so much. I adore them. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to talk about is the thing that I already quickly mentioned, which is obviously the magic systems. There's 3 magic systems. You get Pattern and Numenatra, which very much are, well, they are sometimes framed as opposite to each other, yet more alike than a lot of other people might assume. And then you have Imbuing, which is basically just when you art really, really hard. And so I love Imbuing, to be honest. And with Pattern and Numenatra, again, with those magic systems, and it's something that I mentioned already with the characters, the thing that I love most about these magic systems is how ingrained they are in the world building and in the cultures and in everything else. You could probably say that Numenatria is more, or works more as a hard magic system, while Pattern works more as a soft magic system, because Numenatria very much is sacred geometry and, you know, mathematics and astronomy. It's kind of reminiscent of astrology in a lot of elements, and so that's where you have Numenatria, whereas Pattern is all about instinct. There's no specific rules. You have specific patterns that you can lay, but you know, it's more about learning how to read it and instincts and something that you maybe inherently have or don't have, rather than something that you can learn and that has very hard and fast rules. And so Pattern, you could say, is the more whimsical soft magic system, whereas Numenatria is the more hard magic system. However, the way both of those magic systems are implemented within the world is not hard magic or soft magic. Both of those magic systems are just very ingrained in their cultures, and a lot of times, for example, with Numenatria, even though it has very hard and fast rules, while we are described some inscriptions of Numenatria and some forms of Numenatria, we're not given like half a page of exposition of this is exactly how it looks and this is exactly how it works, etc, etc, etc. It's more so that you get how it works from how characters interact with it and how characters talk about it. And that's why I love both of these magic systems so much, because they are not tacked onto the story. The magic systems don't work without the story doesn't work without the magic systems don't work without the cultures, but they also very much informed the cultures and how they were built. And so I love it so much, because it does the exact opposite from what my biggest pet peeve in world building is, which is that so often authors spend so much time explaining to us how exactly scientifically a magic system works, while completely forgetting to actually root that magic system in their story, in their characters, in their world, and it just feels kind of tacked on. And so yeah, I adore the magic systems, and yeah, it's just, the series is just amazing. What can I say? And I think I once again have talked for quite a while already, and so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video now. If you have read the series and if you have any thoughts you want to share, tell me in the comments down below, but maybe keep it spoiler free or tag it with spoilers. If you haven't read the series, tell me, with my gushing, did I make you scared or did I make you want to pick it up? If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where I read one adult high fantasy book written by a woman or child queer person per month, will be left linked down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!